Okay, I'm live. My face looks really bright. Let me do this. Oh, that was too extreme. All right. Hey, Retro Road Mappers. Does everything look okay? Craig Nye, you're so prompt. I love it. Cliff Hillis, thank you so much, you guys, for chiming in today. Hey, Craig, I love the fact that you and I are both people who are putting out our flamingos to help folks cheer up as they walk by our houses. So thank you for doing that. Yeah, so a little bit of stuff going on today. We'll wait for a few more people. I see people are chiming in, which is awesome, or tuning in, rather. Dawn, hey, nice to see you. Thank you for being a top fan. So it just, while people are kind of filling in as they're entering the auditorium, as it were, crazy windy here today. We've got the sun. I am so excited about the sunshine, but it's, as we would say back home, wicked windy. Wicked windy. We're supposed to take our daily walk after this, and I'm going to have to bundle up like you wouldn't believe, since this whole thing has been going on, this virus quarantine thing. My hair is getting longer and longer, so it's probably going to go flowing all around and everything. But so thank you everybody for showing up today, and thank you on a couple of levels, because one, I love it when I do this to try to, cheer people up and connect people, but also by you tuning into this and me getting ready and having to do this, you guys are, and I'm not kidding, you are helping me, because Helen from the fabulous Jersey Shore, I'm sure it's beautiful and maybe windy and cold out there too. But yeah, doing these videos hopefully helps you kind of escape what's going on for a little bit, but in all seriousness, it really helps me too. And I say that because it gives me an excuse, no, it gives me the reason to actually get dressed in real clothes, to not have my bathrobe on, which I often do because I like walking around in it. I said to my husband, it's like a wearable hug, you kind of wrap it around you. So if I weren't doing these videos, I would be in my bathrobe. I may not be dressed in clothes nor taking a shower. And you guys don't even know this, but I even have shoes on, which is a major deal. So not only thank you for that, but also just for me to do the research for these videos. Because today we're going to talk about, originally I had said we were going to talk about Rhode Island and Connecticut. And here's the cool thing. I always feel bad for the small guy, the small states and everything, where it's like, you don't have a lot going on, so I'm just going to combine you in with some other state. So that's what I did, thinking that Rhode Island, being the smallest state in the Union, would be one that maybe had a few retro roadmap worthy things, but not a lot. Oh, I'm so excited to tell you that not only does Rhode Island have a lot of retro roadmap, but it has so many retro roadmap worthy places that the whole Connecticut will be next week. Next week we're going to talk about Connecticut, because I know that probably has more undiscovered gems or ones that I had forgotten about. But Rhode Island today, if I had gotten my music correctly going on, I'm trying to use this thing called a television that we've used probably more in the last few weeks than we have in the past few years. If I had a song to put on the soundtrack of this, I will put it in the comments after this is done. But there's this wonderful song by Blossom Dearie. I don't know if anybody knows Blossom Dearie, but you should Google her. She was a wonderful jazz singer, and her voice is very distinctive. It's a little girly, but she is one of my favorites. I probably first heard her when I was listening to multiplication rock and things like that. But she has a wonderful song called Rhode Island is Famous for You. And she goes through all of the states, almost all of the states in the Union. But it's Rhode Island is Famous for You. It's a really cute song, and I just love it and her. So Blossom Dearie would be playing in the background right now as we talk about Rhode Island. So we'll talk about fun places to aspire to go to in Rhode Island when we are all able to get out. And the reason I'm doing this is so we don't necessarily lament about the places that are closed right now, but we say, you know what? yeah, when I'm out of my house, I'm going to go to Rhode Island and I'm going to eat these foods and shop at these places and take pictures of this and do all these things. Because Rhode Island is a neat, like it's a small state, but there's a lot going on in it. So it's giving me an exciting bunch of stuff to share about with you. The other thing, before I kind of jump into the whole let's talk about retro road-worthy places in Rhode Island that I want to share with you, is again in kind of the thank you for showing up for these live videos that I'm doing. The other reason I want to say thank you is, much like I just referred to the fact that I don't have the technology at this point. I don't have the technology. They can't rebuild. I can't rebuild them. I'm not the bionic Mod Betty. But I haven't got the technology to kind of be like telling you about these things and then showing you the picture. I'm thinking of maybe doing some of my presentations maybe as an upload that people could maybe, you know, pay a couple of bucks and attend, where I would have the visuals on there, and it would be a little bit more detailing and a little bit more formal, not so off the cuff like this. But here's the thing. So this is a really good takeaway for me and for you. When you don't have all this stuff around you, you can lament it and use it as an excuse, or you can get crafty and you can use your imagination and you can say, okay, you know what? I can't play that music in the background, or I don't have a place where I can like show the slides next to me. So what can I do to kind of, you know, stop people from just looking at my big old face and my background? So you guys gave me the excuse to go through one of my favorite collections. So one of my favorite collections that I can't figure out the best way to display right now are these things. They're called water decals, or I can't remember the official word of them, but basically what they are, and I'm going to show you one from Rhode Island, right? So this one right here, it's still in its little glassine envelope, and these are the vintage, like almost like precursor to the bumper sticker, that you would put some water and you would put it like in the back. I can envision this being in like the back window of a wood panel station wagon, you know, and it's like you would show people where you went on vacation. And this is one from Rhode Island. There's a couple of companies made these. This is Lingrid Turner in Spokane, Washington. Impco used to make them. Those are the ones that I used to find out. And this one I'm able to take out of the little envelope. And so let me just show you this, because the graphics are so neat. Let's see if I can do that. Yeah. And oops, see, I'm getting used to this, but see, I can't. This is how I can show you some pictures of things. So this is the Rhode Island one, and this Rhode Island episode that I'm doing right now got me to thinking, oh hey, this is how I can show you this collection. So we're going to be talking about Rhode Island, but then I realized as I was going through, and you gave me the opportunity to, as I like to call it, play with my toys. That you collect stuff and you just kind of have a pile of things, and you need sometimes a push to go through and see what you have and realize the books you have on your bookshelves, or the you know, the little decals that you thought you were going to put on your vintage camper, but now you're not sure what you're going to do. And so I went through mine, and I have so many from different states that I figured before we get into Rhode Island proper, I would just do a quick recap of some of the states that we already did. So we have done, the last one that we did was Massachusetts, and see this, and you know, the funny thing is, let me where is the camera even? Here we go, Massachusetts. Yeah, see right there you can see almost how cool the colors are. This is really like a neon, maybe because I'm covering up a real neon orange stuff. So this is Massachusetts. This is one of these great stickers that I have that I absolutely love. So we talked about Massachusetts because we're going from east to west. We're covering a state a day every time I do one of these. And of course we're in New England because that's where I'm from. Now here's a slightly different one. This one's from Impco, and this is one from New Hampshire. I have a bunch from New Hampshire, and this is more of like, this is still one of those decals. And the funny thing is too, is that I'll try to show it to, let me see if I can get this. The Impco guy, I think they were out of New Jersey. I can't read it. And this one's sealed up, but they have this really fun mascot here that I actually made a pin of, and I used to wear it on my leather jacket back in the 90s, this Impco guy. So I've been collecting these for quite a while, but that is New Hampshire we covered. We also covered, and I'm going to take it out of the envelope. We've talked about Vermont. So if you're interested in any of these states, you can look back on some of the videos that are being archived below here in the Retro Roadmap Facebook page. But I'm also going to be downloading them and putting them on YouTube, so they can be there for YouTube people, because I can't do the lives there yet because I don't have enough people signing up. So if you haven't signed up, just hit subscribe over on YouTube, and then I can do lives there too. And then we also talked about, this was the first state we did, which was Maine. So if you're interested in learning some of the fun places that I love to recommend for these states, head to the other videos. But as I mentioned, today we're talking about Rhode Island. Smallest state, but a wicked lot of stuff in it. So here's another one. Look at this. When I first started, real quick, when I first started collecting snow globes, my goal was to have one from each state, even if I didn't have it. Yeah, Maine. And it was really hard back in the day to find a snow globe from Rhode Island. So this one, I went down to Newport and I happened to find it. Now, it's not one of my favorite ones. It's kind of got this off-color rainbow, and instead of having like a nice little plaque on the inside where it says Rhode Island, it just is printed right there. But there's so many cool things in Rhode Island that I wanted to show you. So we're going to start off with Rhode Island, and we're going to talk about, because it always ends up being that I'm going to talk about a lot of places to eat. So I hope you had a little snack before this, and if not, you're probably going to run to the kitchen and grab something after I'm done, because I was getting wicked hungry when I was researching some of these places. But if people didn't know, Rhode Island is basically where the idea of the diner started, and really in the modern day, the notion of the food truck. So, you know, it's so funny in the diner world where diners began as kind of these lunch wagons that would come and pull up near these factories in the states like Rhode Island and Massachusetts and things, to be able to offer some food to the people who were working kind of that 24-hour shift, like that third shift in Rhode Island. And I want to say it's Walter Scott. You know, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. But he had one back in the Providence area and started to build these lunch wagons, and that's really kind of the precursor to the diners that we know now, where diners, or you know, the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s diners that were almost like lunch wagons that ended up having a permanent residence versus driving all around. And now the crazy thing is, it's almost come full circle, because now everybody is all into this idea, this novel idea of a food truck, where really it started in the 1800s, late 1800s, with everybody, all the factory workers in Rhode Island. So a little bit of diner history for you guys. And speaking of that type of diner, the neat thing is there is one that is much like that old school type. It's Haven Brothers Diner in downtown. It's parked in downtown Rhode Island. And the neat thing is, it's one of the old school ones where you walk up into the diner. It's parked there. You can walk up into it, and there's a little bit of a counter around there with some stools, and you order from like up in the kitchen area, and you can sit in the diner and eat the food that you got at the counter at Haven Brothers in Providence, or you can just go eat outside. And that's a place where if you're hanging out late night, you know, going to clubs, seeing shows, Lupo's Heartbreak Hotel, I remember going there back in the day. Haven Brothers is a really fun place to experience that almost that 100-year plus history of that type of diner in Rhode Island. Another Rhode Island diner that I want to talk about, and I have a little bit of a, what do I want to call, like, something to show you about it, is the Modern Diner. The Modern Diner in Pawtucket, which looks kind of like this, because I have this tchotchke of the Modern Diner. It is on the National Register of Historic Places, and it is well known because of its distinctive shape. I don't know if you can see this, but it's got this rounded edge. It's called a Sterling Streamliner. And it actually looks, if you can imagine, people back in the day when there were the trains going wicked fast, and it was like flying back and forth. It was like that notion of speed, where a streamlining train would go by. But that's why, that's what the design of the diner, the modern diner, was based on, is that kind of modern looking steam locomotive. However, please note, the number one way you can piss off a diner purist is by calling them old rail cars. Now, so this looks like it was built to look like an old train car, but it is not an old train car. So that is a really important distinction. If you want to piss off a diner guy, just call it an old train car and you're going to get in trouble. Now, the diner people didn't make it easy, because they would also call it, I don't know, the Worcester Dining Car Company, and, trains have dining cars, so it's not easy, but just word to the wise. I also have this other one of the modern diner. These are things that people had sent me, my parents had given me over the years. This is another one. Frankly, I think I'm going to probably gift it to the modern diner, because I have enough stuff catching dust around here. Interesting thing with this one, just so you know, is that when you go to the diner, there is not front angled parking like this. I think that was to make this a little bit more, I don't know, take up more room or whatever. But it's on a main street in Pawtucket, on the National Register for Historic Places. Adorable diner to go to, and I highly recommend it. It's probably one of the more distinctive ones. These Sterling Streamliners, there used to be a bunch of them. I can only think of 2 right now that still exist, and I think I'm blanking on the other one. So that's the modern diner in Pawtucket. There's another one. Oh, yeah, you know what? It was a Salem diner. So the Salem diner in Salem, Massachusetts, which sadly just closed, is another example of the Sterling Streamliner. But great places to get. That one is closed. But the modern diner in Pawtucket is a great place to go get breakfast, sit at the counter, whatnot. Pawtucket also has a bunch of cool things in the area. So Pawtucket has, kind of skipping around here, there's this place called the Break Time Bowl and Bar. And what this is really cool, because Rhode Island used to have a bunch of factories, these huge brick buildings where things used to be made before things were made overseas. And this one brick building in Pawtucket was the Hope Webbing Company. And the company decided to build a bowling alley. I think it's on the 3rd or 4th floor. So I can't imagine having, the office underneath the bowling alley in this factory, but they built it for the workers, actually as an attempt to get them to not unionize, but that's a little bit beside the point. So this bowling alley has been in this old mill building since the 1920s. The mill building closed, and then when it was reopened and kind of reinvented as an art space, they decided to reopen the bowling alley. So it's this neat kind of, I think there's 4, maybe 6 alleys. It's not too many, and they've got a wonderful, neat bar that you can get some fun cocktails or some local beers. I think you can even get some snacks there too. I have this vision of tater tots. I've always had visions of tater tots dancing in my head. But Break Time Bar and Bowl in Pawtucket is a wonderful place to go, and maybe you work up an appetite, you have a drink, and then you go to the modern diner. So those are a couple of places in Pawtucket that are really neat, because we're talking today all about wonderful places to go in Rhode Island. Small state, wicked lot of places to keep on going to. So I'm just going to not rush through, but I'm going to take up, I'm just going to rattle off a few of them, because, like, for example, Wright's Dairy Farm and Bakery in North Smithfield, that's a place you can shop. You can get bottled milk. They raise their own cars. They bottle their own milk. And nowadays, where we're kind of struggling to all get stuff from the regular grocery stores, I love the fact that there's a place that's old school like this, where you can get bakery goods and bottled milk and things. Like, I would like to think that maybe the people, after all this has gone over, that they may get an influx of people realizing that it's important to figure out where you get your milk and do someplace like that. Another diner that literally, it's an old school Worcester diner that just opened within the past 6 months, but it's an actual legitimate old school one, is the Miss Lorraine diner. The Miss Lorraine is in Pawtucket as well, and it is attached to one of these old mill buildings that has also been repurposed into an arts center, which is really cool. I was able to go to that building years ago to see Angela Zampel from Mode Mare. She used to make vintage style clothing, very inspired kind of rockabilly stuff, and I loved what she was doing. She's now very cool. She's making masks for people, which is amazing. But the Miss Lorraine is awesome. You should go check that out when you're in Rhode Island. Kind of thinking of a couple more diners. We talked about Haven Brothers. Oh, Jiggers is a bit more south of Providence. Jiggers is in East Greenwich or Greenwich. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not the most articulate person. And this one may be hard to miss, because you know how diners are usually like they take up this, you know, they're faced like this, you know, here's the street. Well, Jiggers is actually kind of backed into a really narrow place on the road in East Greenwich, and it's a really cool diner that I actually sent Retro Road Husband and Patty Smythe and Scandal to the last time they played there. So that's a really cool diner. And then I think the last one I will talk about isn't really a diner at all. I mean, in the architectural sense, but it is in the restaurant sense, which is Cindy's. And Cindy's is in, I forgot to write it down. I want to say North Smithfield, but I could be wrong. Michael Stewart, I did not get to the seaplane. Why is that not even on my radar? Oh, I'm so bad. See, this is why I love the connection from people, because I totally forgot the seaplane. So Michael Stewart, thank you for telling me about that. And if people are looking for diners in Rhode Island, Google that one too. But Cindy's Diner has a great neon sign, and the thing I love about them is because I love that kind of regional food type thing, and they serve baked beans at breakfast, which I am like an old lady in training, if not there already, but I love baked beans on toast. It's such an old school type thing. So those are a couple of neat places to go to in Rhode Island to eat. A couple of other neat things to mention, and I'm sorry, my face feels. First of all, I mentioned community and things. I want to just say, you know, thank you everybody for signing in here. I see I've got people from multiple states, which is so exciting. And I also want to mention, thank you, Marguerite, for loving my dining room. Thank you. I actually, again, when I was thanking people for giving me the opportunity to do these live videos, I thank you for making me keep my living room clean and neat. Yep, I love cheery colors, as you can see. And so my whole house is all different colors like this. Thank you from New Hampshire, Jeffrey. Oh, we were just talking. We talked about New Hampshire a couple of episodes ago. Let me see if I can find it here. Nope. Oh, here we go. So this goes out to you in New Hampshire, Hampton Beach. There we go. And this is for my little my decal collection. So yes, Michael, I'm so glad you got me back on point, because I was going to talk about regional foods in Rhode Island, because I have a number of them. Okay, so one of the things is coffee milk. So it's basically milk with coffee syrup in it. Typically Autocrat, I think, is the preferred brand. And so that is one of the two kind of rival things that they use for like the official drink of Rhode Island, which would be coffee milk, or also it's not really a drink, but Dell's frozen lemonade is also kind of an indigenous food stuff there. It's delicious, you know, frozen. It's almost like, what would we have down here? Like they call it water ice or water ice. It's lemon flavored that. They also, this is an interesting thing that I love too, so they have a coffee cabinet. So take note. Most of the U.S. would call this a milkshake. If you're where I'm from, you would call it a frap. But in Rhode Island, they call their milkshakes and fraps a cabinet. And what this is basically, and I used to work in an ice cream store, so it's a couple of squirts of syrup, and then some milk, and then ice cream, and then you mix it all together. It's not a ice cream soda. It's a milkshake, or they call it a cabinet. Another interesting couple of things that they have in Rhode Island that you can eat that are unusual. They have stuffies, which are stuffed clams, kind of, you know, chopped up and stuffed back into the shell. They call them stuffies, or also they call them, this is interesting to me, and I don't know if this was just a particular friend of mine, but we call the really big ones, oh, that's right, Julie, you're from the South Shore, so awesome. So I would call the really big clam shells that you would get on the beach quahogs, but it's spelled Quahog, and I heard somebody pronounce it once quahog, which seemed a little bit fancy to me, but I don't know if it's quahogs or quahogs. I call them quahogs. And then there's stuffies. The other thing is clam cakes, which is, again, kind of a bunch of clam and a little bit of batter. And then doughboys. Doughboys are delicious. They're like little pieces of fried dough. I think in other parts of the country you may have fried dough, or like where we are here in Pennsylvania, we have funnel cake, kind of that same riff on that, which is something fried with sugar on it, kind of also known as my favorite food ever. So those are a couple things. Oh, and then the last one I'll leave you with for Rhode Island foods, because we could talk about food all day and I just get really hungry, is chowder. Chowder, or chowder as we like to call it. So there are three different types of clam chowder in my book and most people's book. The white one that you know that is from my neck of the woods is the creamy kind. So that's creamy. That's like, they call it New England clam chowder, but Rhode Island is in New England, and Rhode Island has its own version, and that is more of a thin broth, a little bit more briny, not as thick and creamy. And then the last one, which I don't even want to talk about really because it grosses me out so much, is there's this thing called Manhattan clam chowder where they put their tomatoes or tomatoes in them and tomato sauce, and I don't like tomato sauce and seafood together. So, but whatever. So when you go to Rhode Island, you have your choice of chowders as well. So when you go to Rhode Island, if I haven't made us all hungry enough, and yeah, I am going to go past 3:30, so please feel free because I've got so many things to share about this tiny little state that we should all flock to as soon as we are released. So a couple of fun things you can do in Rhode Island. So I mentioned the bowling and Pawtucket. There is a drive-in movie theater. Not every state has a drive-in movie theater. I know that Delaware doesn't. There is one, I keep on using my wrong hand, one drive-in movie theater, the Rustic Drive-In Movie Theater in North Smithfield. It's the only one in the state, small state, and two neat things about that. One is it's got an awesome sign with like a arrow pointing on it, so it's totally sign worthy if you want to just go and take a picture. Also, not necessarily directly across the street from it, but along that same stretch of, I think it's Route 146, is there's a milk bottle. There's a milk bottle building that I remember at one point was toppled over. Now I think it is upright. It is closed, but it used to be an ice cream stand. So that's a neat kind of roadside thing to look for when you're out there. But you can go to the drive-in movie theater when you're in Rhode Island. There also are a couple of old historic theaters if you want to go see live shows. Like I'm thinking of the stadium in Woonsocket. So we've got Pawtucket and we've got Woonsocket. The Spring Lake Arcade. So they are pretty much the country's oldest penny arcade because you can still play vintage arcade games for a penny. Now it's a little bit difficult to find. I wrote about it a few years ago in Retro Roadmap. It's just this tiny little place on this really small little lake, and it is the most adorable place that you should take the kids, take yourself, and just play some of these classic, old, really antique, vintage arcade games for maybe a penny, maybe a nickel. That's the Spring Lake Arcade in Glendale, Rhode Island, and it's been around since 1931. Another neat thing you can do while you're in Rhode Island, if you're a big fan of carousel horses, like I am, and even better, carousels, there's three historic carousels I want to tell you about. Two of them were made by the Loof Company. One is at pardon me for my printed teleprompter, I guess I could call it, is at Slater Park, and it's considered the oldest Loof stander carousel in the world from 1895. Now, a stander means that the horses don't go up and down, you know, it's just they stand. But the neat thing about them too is it's not all horses on that carousel in Slater Park. They have 44 horses, 3 dogs, 1 lion, 1 camel, 1 giraffe, and 2 chariots. So that is the Loof at Slater Park. But then there's also another one in Crescent Park that also has a Loof carousel. And then the last interesting carousel, and I'll admit I haven't been there because frankly I am a bit too big to ride on it, but it's a really cool one in Watch Hill called the Flying Horses. And this is different because the horses, it's antique, and the horses are little and they are hung by chains kind of attached to either side of them. And they kind of fly around. They're called the flying horses. And they're on a chain. They're not on a pole. So if you like carousels, you can go there. Michael G. Stewart chimes in with Flo's Clam Shack in Newport in Middletown. Yes, I have that on my map. And oh my God, we could spend all day talking about fried clams. That looks like a total old school kind of nice divey place to go get your fried clam, of which I am a fave. So thank you for mentioning that, Michael. Craig, I am so glad you like carousels too, because to me that's one of the favorite things that I love to check out when I am on the road, is if anybody has like those old school carousels. So I'm glad I'm not the only one who loves that. There is a neat bowling alley in Cranston called Lang's Bowlerama that you can do some old school bowling at. And there's all sorts of places. And then I want to talk about, oh crap. Well, here's two funny things. So it's going to be a little bit more about the food, because I forgot to mention, okay, so this food stuff isn't a go and eat it at the place food. It is you go and you get it from pretty much just a counter. But remember when I was talking about Massachusetts? Was it just on Tuesday? Time is taking on such an interesting feeling now. Yes, it was Tuesday, and I took all the time to talk about Massachusetts places to go to. And I was talking about Hartley's Pork Pies in Fall River. So there's a Hartley's Pork Pies in Lincoln, Rhode Island. And there is a bit, I don't want to say of a rivalry, there's an association of, there's some sort of connection between the two Hartley's Pork Pies, yet I'm not sure which ones they are. But from what I've seen, their pork pies look delicious. But you know what I love when there are things like that you could do a taste test. You could be like, oh, we got some from the one in Fall River, and then we got some from the one in Lincoln. Which ones taste better? I don't know, but they all taste so good. And then, an excuse to get on the road and get something to eat. Another thing you could do taste test-wise, I'm thinking off the top of my head for Rhode Island, is these things, and you don't call them hot dogs. Again, kind of like don't call diners old rail cars, because you're going to piss off the diner people. There is a thing called hot wieners in Rhode Island, but you don't call them hot dogs. I wrote down hot dogs, and I was like quick to correct myself, because they have hot wieners. So there's a couple of different places you can get these, kind of distinctive, I almost called them hot dogs, these distinctive wieners in Rhode Island. There's the original New York system. There's the Olneyville New York system, which actually won a James Beard Award a number of years ago. And this place I love because of the name, Wienerama. Ween-O-Rama. You can also get the hot wieners there. And the thing that cracks me up about that place is the fact that I used to have a dog, and this dog breed ran in my family called Weimaraners or Weimaraners. And so we would often call our dog a Wienerama because that's just sounded funny to me. Helen, thank you for recommending the National Carousel Association. They have fun while preserving historic carousels, and yes, I highly recommend them. It's a great resource. Your website is a wonderful resource, and I thank all of your people for keeping us all up to tabs on what's open and what has changed and things like that. So if you ever love to go see vintage carousels, that the National Carousel Association is a wonderful resource. I kind of I'll give you like the ideas, and then there's other people who do like the deep dive that could tell you all about the details. But to me, what I want to encourage you to do is to get on the road and go to some of these places that we love so much, that are little mom and pop shops that make traveling so much fun. They make the country so much more interesting than big box stores. You have a story about where you got your lunch as opposed to just going through like a boring drive-through. So yeah, I'm hoping that when things, when everybody's able to get out of their haciendas or whatever you call your house, that the places we go to and spend our money and are going to be the cool vintage places, because we realize how important they are, and if you don't spend your money on them, they don't open up again. So a few more things before I sign off, because I am going to just run a little bit late, because we're talking about the fact that there are so many neat places to go to in Rhode Island that I'm already blown past my time. One place I want to totally recommend that you go if you love to collect vintage stuff, and I think some retro road mappers do, kind of like me. So I've got my postcard collection. I've got vintage lamps. As you can see, I've got like that one hanging there. I have an old 50s couch right here, and I just love being surrounded with old cool stuff. This lamp right here that you can't see is also vintage. There's a place called Pop, and it's a Pop, I think he calls it the Pop. It's on Facebook, so I'm going to put the link in my thing because, the Emporium of Popular Culture. So OMFG, if you want to just go and be surrounded by all sorts of wonderful collections that you can purchase of cool old like artwork and clothing and books and records and all sorts of things. We ended up going there because we saw a band play there, this band that I used to love, still love, from Rhode Island called Velvet Crush. We went there last summer, and this place, oh my gosh, I swear, if they opened it up as like an Airbnb, I would totally pay to spend a day, just like a night, just hanging out in there and pretend it was my house. So that's Pop in Providence, Emporium Popular Culture. So as I mentioned, there are places that I love to tell people to eat. They tend to take up the most amount of time because frankly, those are the places that end up being open the most. Things to do is always fun, and places to shop. Sometimes there are places that I can recommend, and other times, sadly, the little mom and pops and five and dimes have gone by the wayside. Two really quick places I keep on saying really quick because I want to cram all this stuff in there, that I just thought of that are kind of like you can shop, but you can also eat at, there are two pharmacy soda fountains that you can go, and it's still a pharmacy soda fountain. So one is the Delecta Pharmacy in Warren, and the Green Line Apothecary in Wakefield, Rhode Island. Both of those places are not only apothecaries and pharmacies, but you can go get an ice cream at a counter. And how awesome is that? I think that's pretty awesome. So I have done a lot of talking. If anybody has any questions for me, feel free to put them in the comments. I am more than happy to answer any questions, things like that. And maybe while you're thinking of any questions, I want to tell you about something that I'm actually really excited about that's coming up this Sunday. Because as I mentioned, I like to tell you about places to eat, to do, to shop, and to stay. And if you noticed, I really didn't mention anything about places to stay in Rhode Island because I haven't really found, unless you have $1 quadrillion and you want to stay at one of those Newport cottages, I don't really know of a lot of kind of cool old motels and hotels to stay in Rhode Island. But the cool thing is I know somebody who does, and maybe not from Rhode Island, but from across the country. So I am going to be a special guest on, and I know I'm going to mangle this because I'm talking live and I didn't practice it, the Motellero cyclist. And I apologize, Andrew, that I probably just mangled that, but the cool thing is I'm going to put a link in the comments about this. So this is a really cool Facebook page, website, published book about the cool vintage motels that are still around the United States. So Andrew is from Canada, but he took like a year and rode his motorcycle and stayed in all these cool old vintage motels across the US. And he was interested in chatting with me about Retro Roadmap, and I in turn am excited to hear from him because I often don't have a lot of motels and hotels to recommend for people. So Facebook Live this Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, he and I are going to chat on his page. I will set up an event, but I wanted you guys all on this live to be the first ones to know about it, so nobody else does. But I will send out some invitations to it so you can chime in and you can show up. It's really neat. Like, remember how I was saying earlier that I don't have the technology? I am not the bionic Mod Betty, and I don't have a thing where all of a sudden like a picture flows up. Oh, maybe I do. Yeah, see, I have like the old school way of getting a picture up on my screen here. He actually can do a split screen with me, and we're going to talk about vintage road trips and diners and motels on Andrew's Motero Cyclist. And I can't wait to see what we discover together. So I will put an invite to that on the Retro Roadmap Facebook page. If you're on my email list, I'll send that out, and I'll send some reminders as well. Jeffrey, you asked, am I originally from Massachusetts? And yes, I am. I am a Mass gal. I won't say a Mass hole because that's rude, but no, I'm a Mass gal. And I have not lived in Massachusetts, for like 20 years or so. I fell in love with a man from the state called Delaware that I didn't really know where it was when I first met him. And love caused me to be one of the few people in my family to move out of New England to Delaware. And now we live in Massachusetts. Now we live in Pennsylvania, which we love. But yeah, so a lot of my recommendations, and I kind of cut my teeth retro road mapping in Massachusetts. So you will see a plethora of places that I tend to recommend from the Bay State. But we were talking today, as I said, if anybody has any other questions for me, I'm really happy to answer those at any time. And if not, I will just kind of say my conclusion. As I said, today we were talking about Rhode Island, and I'm still trying to figure out how to do this. Yeah, it's live, people. What can I say? Oh, there we go. There we go. Look, it's like 3D. 3D House of Beef. Anybody get that? Anyhow. So yes, so this is Maud Betty, having spoken to you about all sorts of cool vintage places you can go to in Rhode Island. And as I sign off, as I said at the top of the hour, I just want to thank all of you for showing up here, because I hope I am inspiring you and entertaining you, inspiring you to get out and spend your money at these cool vintage places that we love so much as soon as we're allowed to go out there. But by you tuning in and showing up, that helps me. That helps me get out of my own head. It makes me do some research. It makes me, remember all these neat, fun things that I have collected that I haven't even looked at, but then I realize it would be fun to share with you all. It gets me to literally get, out of my bathrobe and put shoes on and, lipstick. Trust me, on the days that I don't do these, I have no makeup on at all. I pretend I'm going incognito, but frankly, it's probably as soon as I'm done with this, I'll take it off too, because it's not my thing. But I figure, and this is, the darker the times, the brighter the lipstick, I guess it would be, because this is pretty shocking pink, but I figured, why the heck not, Kathy Shock Green, nice to see you from New Jersey. I have actually, in last episode, I mentioned, and you can tell Rich, I mentioned one of the matchbook covers that I have that had a connection to one of the places I talked about in Massachusetts. And that's another collection I have, though. Oh my God, mine is like, it is wicked tiny. I was going to say infinitesimal, but I don't know if that was the right word, compared to the one that Rich Green has. So Kathy and Rich are wonderful people I met through the Tiki community. And thank you so much for chiming in. I hope you guys are doing well. And so thank you so much, everybody. And yes, Craig Fitzgerald. Yes, that's how we met. When you still lived in Vermont, you wrote an article on these stickers for Retro Roadmap. So nice to see you, my friend. And I was telling everybody about this wonderful collection of these I have that I don't know. I don't want to say I don't know what to do with, because part of me wanted to put them on the windows of our camper, our little vintage camper. But I also kind of love the fact that they're like, they haven't been touched in a decade, so I don't know what I'm going to do with them, but it's sure fun to just shuffle around and play with them and stuff. I'm probably going to put some pictures on the Retro Roadmap Instagram page after this. So, of these things. So I don't know. I'm kind of weird about my collections. I don't want to break them. I kind of like things, I can't be one of those crafty people who does stuff with broken pieces, because I like to keep them collected and nice and neat. But that's just me. But if I have any extras, Craig, maybe I'll send some your way, and you can put on the back of like one of your awesome vintage cars, or like, do you still have I remember you had what do you call it? Oh crap, I was going to say a Suburban, but whatever. Okay. So, okay. Yep. They have, okay. All right. Yeah, maybe I'll put them all over. Maybe I'll experiment with putting some over. So, And hey, I know this is going to a little bit late, but I'm so excited to see people showing up because Renee Pedro is watching. Yes, Renee, it's so nice to see you virtually. I hope you are feeling better. And I love the fact that Renee designs, I don't have any of her stuff in the house, but see those pillows behind me? She designed some awesome mid-century modern stuff. Renee, go ahead and put a link to your website or your Facebook page in there if people want to buy stuff from you, if you're still selling some stuff right now. But thank you so much for chiming in. And yeah, feel free to I may make a t-shirt that says, the darker the times, the brighter the lipstick, because why the heck not? Yeah, that's right. You had the blazer. I remember that. But maybe on a guitar or something like that. On your ceiling of your VW camper. What a cool idea. Yeah, you know what? Maybe when it gets a little bit warmer and I'm still doing these and I do them from our vintage camper out in the garage once we doll that up, kind of clean up the garage. Maybe you'll see some of these on the windows. So stay tuned for that. But as I said, thank you all so much for showing up for this. I'm so excited because it really helps me, get the word out about the fun places. I'm thinking next week, so I'm still going to do this every Tuesday and Thursday, 3 o'clock to 3:30 or, 3:45. As I also mentioned kind of in the middle here, this Sunday, I'm going to be on at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard at the Motellero Cyclists Facebook page, where he and I are going to be talking about some of the cool vintage motels around the U.S. that we should all go stay in after all this is said and done. And yes, and then Tuesday and Thursday I'll do this. So Tuesday is going to be Connecticut, which will be pretty interesting because I often refer to that, no offense Connecticut people, as the boring rectangle that gets in the way of the places you actually want to go to. So in any case, yes, Renee Pedro is at crashpaddesigns.com. She's a local gal and we both have so much in common. It's kind of goofy that we both are Pennsylvania area folks who have a mad love for all things Palm Springs, but that's a little bit more mid-mod Betty. So again, thank you so much for everybody tuning in. Just go drive your life as soon as you can get out of the driveway. And thank you for showing up and stay safe and we'll see you soon. All right? Bye-bye.